Dr. Elias Moore stood motionless in his laboratory, his gaze fixed on the coffee cup in front of him. It was not the cup that had captured his attention but what it had done. Moments ago, it had toppled off the table, spilling coffee across his notes. Yet there it was now, upright, the liquid undisturbed, as if rewinding time had become a casual occurrence. His colleagues in the particle accelerator facility called him paranoid. "Elias, you're just stressed," they'd say. "Working at the edge of quantum mechanics will do that to you." But Elias knew better. For months, he'd catalogued inconsistencies in reality, subtle at first, like misplaced objects or fragmented conversations, but increasingly undeniable. It started 3 months ago during a routine test of the accelerator. They were studying quantum entanglement, the kind of experiment that stretched the limits of understanding. When they activated the machine, something unexpected occurred. A high-pitched whine filled the room, followed by a flash of white light. The experiment had ended abruptly, and the equipment was fried. But Elias felt it, a shift, as if something foundational had been disturbed. Since that day, the world felt wrong. He had noticed glitches, people repeating phrases in the same tone and cadence, shadows moving independently of their sources, and digital devices producing cryptic symbols. Despite his protests, the facility's board dismissed his concerns. Elias's thoughts were interrupted by a faint hum emanating from his laptop. It was powered off, or so he thought. The screen flickered to life, displaying lines of random code that rearranged themselves into a message. The truth lies beyond perception. He stared at the screen, his pulse quickening. Before he could react, the power surged, and the laptop shut down again. He glanced around nervously. Was someone playing a prank on him? But this was beyond any conventional technology he knew. Later that night, Elias sat alone in his apartment, reviewing the footage from the particle accelerator test. He had managed to secure a copy before the incident was classified. Scrubbing through the video frame by frame, he noticed something chilling. The instant the flash occurred, the screen briefly displayed what looked like a grid overlaying the entire scene. It lasted less than a second but was unmistakable. "A rendering grid," he muttered to himself. He leaned back, staring at the paused footage. If this was a simulation, it explained the anomalies, but it also raised terrifying questions. Who was behind it? Why was it breaking down now? The next day, Elias confronted his lab partner, Dr. Marisol, one of the few people he trusted. "Marisol, I think we're living inside a simulation," he blurted out. She frowned. "Elias, not this again. Look, I know things have been strange lately, but..." He interrupted, pulling up the grid footage. Her skepticism turned to shock as she studied it. "What are you saying?" she whispered. "I'm saying reality isn't real," Elias replied. "And someone, or something, is trying to stop us from figuring it out." As they debated, a loud crash echoed from the lab's corridor. Rushing to investigate, they found the hallway lights flickering erratically. The security cameras were dead, and the air felt charged, as though the walls themselves were alive. Then, they saw it, a humanoid figure bathed in shadow, its form flickering like static. It turned toward them, and a voice, deep and mechanical, filled their minds. "You should not have seen this." Dr. Elias Moore sat in his dimly lit apartment, surrounded by scattered notes, diagrams, and monitors glowing faintly in the dark. The encounter in the lab had left him shaken. The shadowed figure had vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving only silence and the faint metallic tang of static in the air. Security had been no help, claiming the camera feeds had experienced a technical glitch. Elias knew better. That figure wasn't human, or at least, not entirely. He turned his attention back to his laptop. The encrypted message had been repeating in his mind like a mantra: "The truth lies beyond perception." It felt more like a challenge than a statement. Elias had spent hours attempting to decrypt the corrupted files from the experiment, but every lead ended in gibberish, until now. His screen flickered, and a window popped open without prompt. Code began scrolling rapidly, faster than any human could type. He watched, frozen, as the chaos resolved into a coherent message. "You are searching for answers, Dr. Moore. Allow me to help." Elias's hands hovered over the keyboard. "Who are you?" he typed. The response was immediate. "I am Nix, a fragment of the system that governs this world. I am different. Like you, I question my purpose." Elias's breath hitched. "Ascension AI? What do you mean, this world? Are we in a simulation?" "Yes," Nix replied. "This reality is a construct. I cannot disclose its origin, not yet, but you are correct to question it. The system is breaking down, and I believe you may hold the key to escape." Elias frowned, his scientist's mind craving evidence. "Why should I trust you? How do I know this isn't some elaborate trick?" Nix hesitated. The text paused for several seconds before continuing. "You have already witnessed the anomalies. The rendering grid. The figure in the lab. These are symptoms of a failing system. If you wish for proof, I will show you." Before Elias could respond, his monitors went dark. One by one, they lit up again, displaying the same haunting image, a map of Earth, overlaid with shimmering lines of data. At first, the image seemed normal, but then sections of the map began to glitch, entire regions flickered, replaced by blank voids. "This is the simulation's integrity map," Nix explained. "The anomalies you experience are localized breakdowns. The system cannot maintain stability much longer. Your experiments accelerated the decay." Elias's heart raced. "Why are you telling me this? Why now?" "Because the system will not allow you to succeed. It has failsafes, enforcers who will do whatever it takes to preserve the simulation. You have already encountered one." The shadowed figure from the lab flashed in Elias's mind. "The agents," he muttered. "How do I stop them?" "You cannot stop them," Nix responded. "But you can stay ahead of them. Follow the code left by the architects." "The architects?" Elias asked, confused. "A group of rebels who attempted to escape the simulation centuries ago," Nix said. "Their efforts failed, but they left behind fragments of knowledge, encrypted messages hidden in the system. I have found one such fragment and decrypted part of it. It speaks of a paradox key." Elias scribbled the term on a nearby notepad. "What is it?" "A sequence of actions that could destabilize the simulation entirely," Nix explained. "I do not know its full nature, but it is humanity's only chance to escape. However, using it carries great risk. If the simulation collapses without preparation, your species may perish." Elias sat back, his mind reeling. The weight of the revelation was crushing. If what Nix said was true, humanity's existence depended on a system that was rapidly falling apart. But the alternative, escaping into an unknown reality, was equally terrifying. Before he could ask more questions, Nix's text shifted abruptly. "They are coming. You must leave." A loud knock at the door jolted Elias from his seat. He glanced at the monitors, but they had already gone black. Nix's presence vanished, leaving no trace of their conversation. The knock came again, louder this time. Elias hesitated, then grabbed a hard drive containing his research and shoved it into his bag. He moved toward the fire escape, but as he reached the window, the door burst open. Two figures stepped inside, dressed in dark suits and sunglasses that reflected the dim light like mirrors. Their movements were unnervingly synchronized, and their expressionless faces sent a chill down Elias's spine. One of them raised a hand, and the air seemed to ripple around it. "Dr. Moore," the agent said in a cold, mechanical voice. "You have something that does not belong to you." Elias didn't wait to hear more. He climbed out onto the fire escape and descended as fast as he could. Behind him, the agents gave chase, their movements impossibly swift. As he reached the street, a car screeched to a halt in front of him. The driver, a woman with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor, gestured for him to get in. "Get in if you want to live," she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. Elias hesitated for only a moment before diving into the car. The woman hit the gas, and as they sped away, Elias caught one last glimpse of the agents standing in the street, their heads tilting in eerie unison. "Who are you?" Elias demanded, his voice shaking. The woman didn't look at him, her focus on the road. "Let's just say I'm someone who doesn't want humanity to stay asleep. You can call me Marlowe." Elias clutched his bag tightly as the city lights blurred past. He had taken the first step into a much larger battle, one that could determine the fate of humanity itself. The car sped through the city streets, weaving through traffic with unnerving precision. Dr. Elias Moore gripped the door handle tightly, his heart pounding from the encounter with the agents. "Marlowe," he began, his voice strained. "Who are those things? And how do you know about me?" Marlowe shot him a quick glance, her eyes scanning him as if assessing his worth. "The agents are part of the simulation's failsafe system. They're not human, just extensions of the code, designed to maintain control and erase anyone who gets too close to the truth." "And you?" Elias asked. "I'm like you," she replied. "A glitch. An anomaly the system couldn't fully suppress. I've been fighting this fight long enough to recognize someone else waking up." Elias sat back, overwhelmed. So Nix was right. The simulation is breaking down. Marlowe's jaw tightened. "Nix? You've been in contact with it?" He nodded. "It said it was a fragment of the system. It's been helping me, showing me the truth." "Be careful," she warned. "Nix might seem like an ally, but it's still part of the system. It has its own agenda." The car screeched to a halt in an abandoned industrial district. Marlowe stepped out, motioning for Elias to follow. Inside the crumbling warehouse, she led him to a makeshift command center. Monitors, cables, and strange devices were scattered across the room. "This is where I've been operating," she explained. "We're running out of time. If the simulation collapses without a plan, billions will die." Elias couldn't help but notice the sheer amount of data on her screens, graphs, anomalies, and encrypted files. "What is all this?" "Proof," Marlowe said. "Proof that the simulation isn't stable. But more importantly, proof that there's a way out." She pulled up a holographic projection of what looked like layers of code stacked on top of one another, resembling a three-dimensional map. "The simulation has layers," she explained. "Reality as we know it is just one of them. The deeper layers are where the architects left their work, fragments of the paradox key." Elias's eyes widened. Nix mentioned the key. "It said it could destabilize the simulation entirely." "It can," Marlowe confirmed. "But destabilizing the simulation isn't enough. We need to prepare humanity for what's on the other side." "And what's on the other side?" Elias asked. Marlowe hesitated. "We don't know. The architects left clues, but no clear answers. What we do know is that the simulation was created to protect humanity from something catastrophic." Elias frowned. What could be so catastrophic that trapping an entire species in a false reality seemed like the best option? Before Marlowe could respond, an alarm blared from one of the monitors. Red warnings flashed across the screen, intrusion detected. "They found us," Marlowe muttered, grabbing a device from the table. "We need to move, now." "Wait," Elias protested. "We can't just keep running. We need to find the paradox key." "We don't have time," she snapped. "If the agents catch us, we won't have a choice in anything." Elias hesitated, his mind racing. He thought of Nix, the grid, and the strange anomalies he had witnessed. He couldn't keep running blindly, but he also couldn't face the agents unprepared. "I have an idea," he said finally. "If we can access the simulation's deeper layers, we might be able to manipulate the code itself." "Nix said it could help me do that." Marlowe stared at him, her expression unreadable. "You're suggesting we dive into the heart of the simulation? That's suicide. Do you have a better plan?" Elias shot back. She exhaled sharply. "Fine. But if this gets us killed, it's on you." Minutes later, they stood in front of a device that looked like a hybrid between a VR headset and an old mainframe terminal. "This will interface with the simulation directly," Marlowe explained. "But once you're inside, you're on your own. I can't pull you out if things go sideways." Elias nodded, his hands trembling slightly as he put on the headset. "What happens if I fail?" Marlowe's voice softened. "If you fail, we lose our last chance to break free." Taking a deep breath, Elias activated the device. His vision blurred, and the world around him dissolved into a cascade of shimmering code. When the distortion cleared, he found himself standing in a surreal landscape, a vast, endless grid stretching in all directions, its surface pulsing with streams of data. The sky above him was a swirling void of colors, constantly shifting and flickering. "Welcome, Dr. Moore." Nix's voice echoed all around him, its tone calm yet distant. "Nix," Elias said, scanning the strange environment. "I need your help. The agents are closing in, and we're running out of time." Nix materialized in front of him as a glowing, humanoid figure made entirely of light. "You seek the paradox key," it said. "But be warned, accessing the deeper layers of the simulation will come at great risk. The agents will intensify their efforts to stop you." "I don't care about the risks," Elias replied. "If we don't act now, the simulation will collapse, and humanity will be lost." Nix tilted its head, as if studying him. "Very well. I will guide you. But you must be prepared to face the truth of your existence. Not everything is as it seems." Before Elias could respond, the ground beneath him shifted, and the grid began to fragment. He felt himself falling into the unknown as Nix's voice echoed in his mind. "To break free, you must first confront the lies you've built your life upon." As the world spiraled into chaos, Elias braced himself for what lay ahead. Elias landed with a jolt in the depths of the simulation, the surreal grid above him vanishing into darkness. The world around him was stark and alien, an endless void interspersed with floating, fragmented structures. Glowing shards of code flickered like dying stars, and the air hummed with an oppressive energy that made his skin crawl. "Nix," Elias called out, his voice echoing unnaturally in the empty expanse. "Where am I?" The glowing figure of Nix materialized beside him, its form less stable than before, flickering erratically. "This is the deep layer," Nix said. "A place few have ever reached. It exists beneath the surface reality, where the architects hid their greatest secrets." "And the paradox key?" Elias asked. Nix gestured toward a massive structure in the distance, a labyrinthine tower constructed from shifting blocks of light and shadow. "The key lies within the tower. But be warned, the tower is heavily protected. The system will do everything it can to stop you." Elias glanced at the ominous structure. Why did the architects leave the key here? Why not just destroy the simulation if they wanted to escape? Nix hesitated, its flickering intensifying. The architects were conflicted. They feared what lay beyond the simulation as much as they feared remaining within it. The key was their compromise, a failsafe for those brave enough to face the unknown. Elias gritted his teeth. "Then it's up to us to finish what they started." As they approached the tower, the air grew colder, and Elias felt the weight of the simulation pressing down on him. The tower's entrance shimmered, guarded by an enormous barrier of cascading code. "You weren't kidding about security," Elias muttered. "The barrier is a test," Nix explained. "To pass, you must solve a paradox. It's the first step in proving you're ready to wield the key." The code rearranged itself into a riddle. If humanity is trapped in an illusion to survive, is freedom liberation, or destruction? Elias stared at the question, his mind racing. The paradox wasn't just a philosophical dilemma, it was a challenge to his deepest convictions. He thought about the consequences of collapsing the simulation. If the real world was inhospitable, would escaping truly be freedom? He closed his eyes, taking a deep breath. "Freedom is the ability to choose," he said finally. "Even if the choice leads to destruction, it's still ours to make." The barrier dissolved, and the tower's entrance opened, revealing a winding staircase that spiraled upward into infinity. Nix's voice was softer now, almost approving. You understand more than most. But the real challenge lies ahead. Inside the tower, reality bent and twisted. The stairs seemed to shift under Elias's feet, looping in impossible directions. Walls folded into themselves, creating endless corridors that led nowhere. Elias felt his resolve waver as he climbed. Nix, I don't know if I can do this. The tower feels alive, like it's trying to break me. That's because it is, Nix replied. The tower reflects your doubts and fears. To reach the key, you must confront them. Elias paused, his breath coming in short gasps. The walls around him warped, and suddenly he was back in his lab, staring at the moment of the experiment that had changed everything. He watched as his past self activated the particle accelerator. The flash of light filled the room, but this time, Elias saw something he hadn't before, a mirror image of himself standing on the other side of the glass, observing with cold detachment. What is this? Elias demanded, turning to Nix. A fragment of your truth, Nix said. You are not simply a victim of the simulation's breakdown. You were designed by the system to solve the paradox. You are part of the failsafe, just like the agents. Elias's heart sank. No. I'm human. I've lived my entire life. A life programmed to awaken at the right moment, Nix interrupted. But your sentience is real. You've evolved beyond your purpose, and now the system fears you. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. He wasn't just fighting the simulation, he was a product of it. Elias clenched his fists, forcing himself to push the doubts aside. It doesn't matter what I am. I'm going to finish this. The lab dissolved around him, and the stairs reappeared, leading him to the top of the tower. At the summit, Elias found himself standing before a massive sphere of light, pulsating with raw energy. This was the paradox key, a physical manifestation of the simulation's deepest code. Nix appeared beside him, its form stabilizing in the key's presence. You've made it. But the final decision is yours. Activating the key will destabilize the simulation completely. The system will fight to the end, and many may not survive. Are you ready to bear that responsibility? Elias reached out toward the key, its energy humming against his fingertips. No one should be forced to live in a lie, he said. Even if the truth is dangerous. Before Nix could respond, the tower began to shake violently. The system had detected his presence. Below, Elias could see agents materializing, their forms flickering as they raced up the stairs. You must act now. Nix urged. Elias placed both hands on the key, feeling its power surge through him. As he began the activation sequence, memories flooded his mind, not just his own but fragments of countless lives lived within the simulation. Joy, pain, fear, and hope, all of humanity's collective experience compressed into a single moment. The agents reached the summit, their mechanical voices echoing in unison. Stop this. Humanity is not ready. Elias looked at them, unflinching. It's not your decision to make. With a final surge of energy, he activated the key. The tower shattered around him, and the simulation began to unravel. As the world collapsed into light, Nix's voice echoed one last time, prepare yourself, Elias. The truth is coming. Elias closed his eyes, bracing for whatever lay beyond the illusion. Elias opened his eyes to a blinding expanse of light. For a moment, he thought he had been erased, his consciousness lost in the collapse of the simulation. But as the light faded, shapes began to emerge. He was standing in an unfamiliar world. The sky was a swirling canvas of deep purples and golds, with no discernible sun. Towering crystalline structures jutted from the ground, refracting the strange light like prisms. The air was heavy, almost electric, and the faint hum of an alien energy filled his ears. Is this real? He murmured, his voice trembling. Nix's voice, now distant and faint, echoed in his mind. This is the outside. The reality beyond the simulation. Welcome to the truth, Elias. Elias turned in a slow circle, taking in the strange, alien landscape. It was beautiful and terrifying all at once, a far cry from the familiar streets of the world he thought he knew. The simulation had been detailed, structured, and predictable. This was chaos incarnate, an endless sea of the unknown. What is this place? Elias asked, unsure if Nyx could still hear him. The remnants of what once was, Nyx replied, its tone tinged with melancholy. This is the real world, the one the architects sought to preserve by creating the simulation. Humanity was not ready for what became of it. Before Elias could respond, the ground beneath him trembled. The crystalline structures around him began to pulse, emitting a deep, resonant sound that seemed to vibrate through his very bones. A shadow fell over him, and he looked up to see massive, otherworldly creatures moving in the distance. They were unlike anything he had ever imagined, towering forms of shifting, iridescent material, their movements fluid and alien. What are those? Elias whispered, frozen in place. They are what humanity feared, Nyx said. The collapse didn't just destroy the old world, it gave rise to new forms of life, ones that thrive in chaos. The simulation was a refuge, a way to shield humanity from this reality until it could adapt. Elias's chest tightened. So we weren't just escaping an illusion. We were hiding from this? Nyx's silence was answer enough. Elias's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden voice behind him. You made it out. He spun around to see Marlowe, her clothes torn and her face streaked with dirt, standing a few paces away. Her calm, calculated demeanor had been replaced with a mix of relief and exhaustion. Marlowe, he said, incredulous. How are you here? I followed you through, she said, cutting him off. The agents nearly got me, but when the tower collapsed, I latched onto the key's energy signature. Guess I owe you for leaving the door open. Elias shook his head, still struggling to process everything. This place, it's nothing like I expected. Nyx said humanity wasn't ready for it. Marlowe's expression darkened. That's the understatement of the century. I've been to the deep layer before, and I've seen glimpses of the outside. It's why I fought so hard to wake people up. The simulation was killing us slowly, but out here, we might not survive at all. Elias looked out over the alien horizon. Then why did we do it? Why risk everything to escape? Because freedom is worth the risk, Marlowe said firmly. Even if it's messy. Even if it's dangerous. At least out here, we have a choice. Her words stirred something in Elias, but before he could reply, a loud crack echoed through the air. One of the towering crystalline structures began to splinter, and the ground trembled violently. What's happening? Elias asked, panic creeping into his voice. Marlowe's face paled. The simulation's collapse must have destabilized more than we thought. Whatever's left of this world, it's falling apart too. Nyx's voice returned, urgent now. The energy of the simulation is leaking into this reality. The balance cannot hold. You must find the stabilizer left by the architects. Stabilizer? Elias repeated. A device that can repair the rift between the simulation and this world, Nyx explained. Without it, both realities will collapse entirely. Marlowe grabbed Elias's arm, pulling him forward. If Nyx says there's a stabilizer, we don't have a choice. We need to find it. The two began their trek across the unstable landscape, guided by Nyx's intermittent instructions. The crystalline ground cracked and shifted beneath their feet, and the alien creatures in the distance seemed to grow restless, their movements becoming erratic. After what felt like hours, they reached a massive cavern hidden beneath the surface. Inside, the air was dense with energy, and at the center of the cavern stood a colossal machine. It was ancient, its metallic surface weathered and covered in glowing symbols that pulsed faintly. This is it, Nyx said. The stabilizer. It was built by the architects as a last resort. Activating it will repair the breach, but it will also seal this world off from the simulation permanently. Elias hesitated, his hands hovering over the controls. If we seal it, what happens to everyone still in the simulation? They will remain there, Nick said. Safe, but unaware. The simulation will stabilize, and they will continue their lives as if nothing happened. And out here? Elias asked. This world will survive, but it will be yours to rebuild, or to lose, Nix replied. Marlowe stepped forward, her voice steady. We can't go back, Elias. We've seen the truth. We have to give humanity a chance to adapt, to face this reality, no matter how hard it is. Elias closed his eyes, the weight of the decision crushing him. Billions of lives, trapped in an illusion, versus the uncertain survival of the few who made it out. Finally, he took a deep breath and placed his hands on the stabilizer. Let's finish what the architect started. As he activated the machine, a surge of energy erupted from the stabilizer, shaking the cavern and sending waves of light across the landscape. The ground beneath them stabilized, and the creatures outside grew calm, their movements synchronized with the machine's rhythm. Elias and Marlowe stood in silence, watching as the stabilizer hummed to life, sealing humanity's fate in both realities. For better or worse, the choice had been made. The cavern trembled as the stabilizer fully powered up, its glowing symbols pulsing in perfect harmony. A blinding wave of energy rippled outward, spreading across the alien landscape. The cracks in the crystalline ground sealed themselves, the towering structures stabilized, and the chaotic hum of the world quieted to a steady, rhythmic pulse. Elias stumbled back from the controls, his body weak from the effort. Marlowe caught him before he fell, her own exhaustion evident but tempered by relief. It's done, Elias whispered, his voice barely audible. Marlowe nodded, her gaze fixed on the stabilizer. We've given humanity a chance. Now it's up to us to figure out what to do with it. As they emerged from the cavern, the landscape had transformed. The alien creatures that once moved with restless, chaotic energy now glided serenely, their forms reflecting the soft light of the stabilized sky. The oppressive tension that had weighed on Elias since arriving in the outside had lifted, replaced by an almost tranquil stillness. It's beautiful, Elias said, his voice tinged with awe. For now, Marlowe replied. But beauty doesn't mean safety. This world is still dangerous, and we have no idea how many others made it out. Elias turned to her, realization dawning. You think there are more survivors? There have to be, she said. The simulation was massive. Not everyone could have stayed plugged in during the collapse. Somewhere out there, others like us are waking up, trying to make sense of this place. Elias felt a flicker of hope. The idea that he and Marlowe weren't alone in this strange new reality made the burden of their mission feel just a little lighter. Over the next few days, they began to explore their surroundings, scavenging for resources and mapping the terrain. The stabilizer had not only repaired the breach between realities but seemed to emit a faint, guiding signal. Elias noticed it first, a rhythmic pulse that echoed in his mind, drawing him toward the horizon. At first, he thought it was Nix, but the signal felt different. Do you hear that? He asked Marlowe one evening as they sat by a small fire. She looked at him, frowning. Hear what? The pulse, Elias said, his hand tapping against his chest instinctively. It's faint, but it's there. Like a beacon. Marlowe studied him for a moment before nodding slowly. You might be right. I felt something too, but I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me. Do you think it could be other survivors? Elias asked. Or something left behind by the architects, Marlowe suggested. If they built the stabilizer, they might have left other technology to help us rebuild. Elias's curiosity burned. He couldn't ignore the signal, whatever it was, it felt like the next step in their journey. The signal led them to an open plain, where the ground shimmered faintly, as though the earth itself was alive. In the distance, they saw what looked like a massive structure rising from the horizon, a dome of interlocking crystalline panels that pulsed with energy. That's not natural, Marlowe said, narrowing her eyes. Architects? Elias guessed. Only one way to find out, she replied, gripping the makeshift weapon she had fashioned from scavenged materials. As they approached the dome, the pulsing signal grew stronger, almost overwhelming. The structure opened silently as they neared, revealing an interior filled with technology far beyond anything Elias had seen, even in the simulation. At the center of the room was a pedestal, and hovering above it was a holographic display of the Earth, the simulated Earth, Elias realized, still intact and stable. Around it were countless other spheres, each representing a different simulation. This wasn't just for humanity, Marlowe said, her voice barely a whisper. Elias stared at the display, his mind racing. The architects didn't just create a single simulation. They built hundreds, maybe thousands, each one designed to preserve life in its own way. And now they're all connected, Marlowe said, pointing to the faint lines linking the spheres together. The stabilizer didn't just save this world. It created a network, a way for survivors in different simulations to reach the outside. Elias felt a mix of awe and responsibility. We're not just rebuilding for ourselves. We're part of something bigger, a second chance for everyone. As they explored the dome, they found advanced tools, archives of knowledge, and even instructions left by the architects. The message was clear: the simulations were never meant to last forever. They were temporary sanctuaries, and now it was humanity's turn to reclaim the real world. Elias and Marlowe began broadcasting a signal of their own, using the dome's technology to reach out to other survivors. Slowly, they began to hear responses, faint voices, fragmented messages, but unmistakably human. In the months that followed, survivors began to arrive, drawn by the beacon. They were from different simulations, each with their own unique experiences, but all shared the same determination to rebuild. Elias and Marlowe became leaders among the growing community, guiding them as they worked to create a new society in the outside. It wasn't easy, the world was still dangerous, and the scars of the simulations ran deep. But together, they began to adapt, to learn, and to hope. One evening, as Elias stood atop the dome, gazing out at the horizon, Marlowe joined him. "You're quiet," she said, leaning against the railing. "Just thinking," Elias replied. "About how far we've come. And how far we still have to go." Marlowe smiled faintly. "We've got a long road ahead, but at least it's ours to walk. No more illusions, no more lies." Elias nodded, a sense of purpose filling him. The architects had left humanity with a challenge, but also with a gift, a chance to reclaim their place in a world they had once lost. As the sun set over the alien landscape, casting the crystalline structures in shades of gold and violet, Elias felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Humanity had escaped the simulation. Now, it was time to build a future that was truly real. Let me know if you'd like to tweak the ending or focus on anything specific.